If you do a search for wireless headphones on Amazon, you'll find that you can spend anywhere from less than $100 all the way up to many hundreds of US. With the exception of a few relatively niche features like head tracking for spatial audio, most of these headphones are all going to have much the same set of features. That's going to include things like active noise cancelling, voice cancelling for taking calls, high quality Bluetooth codecs like LDAC or aptX HD and aptX Adaptive, low latency mode for gaming and watching videos, and of course various versions of EQ and sound customization. And so with feature lists that are all roughly the same, and battery life that rarely drops anything below a good solid week's worth of regular use, what's actually separating the cheaper wireless headphones from the more expensive ones? It must be sound quality, mustn't it? That would be nice and easy, wouldn't it? If only life were easy. As you've no doubt already guessed, the Edifier W830NB headphones that I'm talking about today have all the regular features of a wireless active noise cancelling headphone. I'm actually not going to go through all these features in a list because you can quickly and easily look it up using the links I'll put in the description down below. Just choose the link that's most relevant for your country. What you won't find at those links is a conversation of how these sound compared to their competition, and also what they're like to use in a day-to-day sense. And that's because that's a more complicated discussion, and therefore I wanted to invest all of our time here in this video to talking about that, sound quality and usability. Let's get some of the basics out of the way first. The W830s feel pretty good for an affordable headphone. And by the way, I should mention the pricing on these is around about $75, but I've even seen them listed cheaper on Amazon. So they're a very affordable headphone, but they don't feel cheap. They don't feel as premium as options from Sony, Sennheiser or Bose, but they definitely don't feel cheap or flimsy. Along with that comes comfort that's comparable to any other wireless headphone I've tried, recognizing that we all have slightly different head shapes and sizes, and that comfort is often as subjective or maybe even more subjective than audio. I do think it's a shame that they don't come with some sort of case or carry pouch, because if you're buying a headphone like this with active noise cancelling, chances are you're going to be carrying it around with you. And so I would have liked to see at least a fabric pouch included at the price, but at the same time, you could go out and very easily buy yourself a carry case or a pouch for these, and you're still going to end up with a headphone below $100. And in fact, I'll put a link down below through to a case or maybe a couple of cases that you can take a look at just to see what's out there. Where the lower cost of the W830s does probably properly start to reveal itself is when we get to connectivity. These connected to any of my devices quickly and seamlessly, and the Edifier app is fantastic. But I found there were some ongoing issues when I used LDAC as my codec of choice. Every now and then the music would just pause itself. I'm assuming maybe there was a momentary lack of connectivity and the playback device assumed it had lost a Bluetooth connection, and that meant that I then had to go and manually restart the music either with the button on the headphone or by going into the app or the player and pressing play again. And that can be pretty frustrating when you're trying to focus on your work or some other task, and you keep having to be drawn back out of what you're focusing on to restart the music. And by the way, it didn't seem to matter whether I used my Samsung phone or a FiiO digital audio player. The problem was consistently there when I was using LDAC with any device from the W830s, and so I do think the issue was the headphones and not so much the source device. Don't give up on these just yet though, because if you switch LDAC off on these, they sound almost as good, like 99% as good. Even though the W830s lack aptX HD or aptX Adaptive, in other words any of the aptX codecs, they still sound great with the lower quality codecs being used. That's AAC and SBC for those that are interested. The LDAC sound is very slightly better, as I said before, and perhaps if I wanted to take the time to fiddle around with the different settings in the Edifier app, you can choose exactly how it's doing the LDAC transmission. Perhaps if I played with that, I could have gotten it working, but many of you, like me, aren't going to want to take the time to fiddle around with it. And honestly, I think they sound good enough without LDAC, I probably wouldn't bother fiddling. And so just to clarify, the connectivity of these without LDAC activated is bulletproof. I did not once have any issues in all sorts of use cases. Before we talk into exactly how they sound, let's talk briefly about noise cancelling and microphone or call quality. As you probably already can tell, this is the microphone now on the W830s. We'll let you decide if the sound quality is good or bad. Keep in mind that you can't compare it to what you were hearing just a moment ago, because my normal video audio is recorded through a studio grade microphone. So think of this audio as more in the context of if this was a video call or a phone call. Does it work for you? Is it good? Is it not so good? And of course, let me know in the comments down below what you think of it. When it comes to active noise cancelling, the Edifier W830s give you a few options, including a fantastic one called wind reduction. That's tuned to specifically prevent wind noise when you're out and about walking, running, cycling perhaps, although maybe not a good idea with noise cancelling headphones on. Or perhaps it's just the walk from the train station to the office as the last leg of your commute. Whatever it is though, it's going to help to cut down wind noise that you might otherwise hear with other active noise cancelling designs. The options available give you a nice range of control to customize exactly how the active noise cancelling works for you, or you could just switch it on and leave it in its default settings because it works really well like that as well. And in my experience, if you just switch on general noise cancelling, it's going to do an excellent job regardless of your circumstances. However, you'll probably want to leave active noise cancelling switched off on these as much as you can because there's a bit of an issue with it. You see, the moment you turn on active noise cancelling in the W830s, the sound quality changes for the worse. With noise cancelling off, the W830s have a lovely natural tonal balance, along with solid bass and excellent sense of clarity in the top end. With noise cancelling switched on, the bass reduces significantly and the top end starts to feel a little bit harsh as a result. They don't sound bad with noise cancelling switched on, but the contrast between the noise cancelling on and the noise cancelling off sound shows you how good these should sound all the time. And sadly, you can't replace the lost bass and therefore the lovely balance in tonality with EQ settings. No matter how much I tried, there's something about having active noise cancelling switched on that actually prevents the W830s from delivering and producing the bass that they can when that circuit's switched off. And that's an extra shame because if you're in noisy environments like on a plane, you're going to want extra bass to offset the low frequency drone of, say, plane engines. And then it gets extra sad when you find out that if you switch noise cancelling off in these, they go toe to toe with the flagships from brands like Sennheiser and Sony. Admittedly, I think the Sony WH-1000XM5s deliver just a little bit more resolution and detail than the Edifiers, but the Sonys lose out to the Edifiers on tonality because the Sonys always sound a touch muted and a touch muffled. That can make the Sonys a slightly more relaxed listen because the Edifiers are a bit more forward in the upper mid-range and treble. This is using the default EQ settings on both headphones, of course. You can tweak them to your heart's content. But on a track like Step Right Up, you really notice the lack of upper end energy from the Sonys. And it gives the Edifiers the edge because of their sense of improved clarity. Just as I couldn't EQ bass back into the Edifiers when using active noise cancelling, you also can't EQ clarity back into the Sonys. No matter how much you tweak the upper mid-range and the treble frequencies, you'll just never get them sounding as crisp and clean up top as the Edifiers do. Their character, that being the Sonys, is just always smooth and polite, sometimes a little bit too polite. But that's also personal taste, and sometimes that politeness can be helpful because it makes them an easier listen, particularly in louder environments where you might need to up the volume a little bit more. Of course, with the Edifiers though, you can achieve a politer sound through EQ. And so that's where they get the win for me over the Sonys, as long as you don't need active noise cancelling all the time. Now I should also clarify here that the sound of the treble, or the quality of the treble from the W830s is a little bit cheaper sounding. And what I mean by that is that generally a cheaper headphone will have cheaper drivers, and cheaper drivers generally don't deliver quite as refined of a sound. And that's true here as well. It's also not something that you can EQ out of the sound because it's not about the amount of treble, it's about the quality of the treble. It's about how the driver is actually moving the air, and there's nothing you can do with EQ to fix that. And so there's a tiny little bit of harshness in the treble from the Edifiers, but it's not a big deal. It only really affects you on some occasional tracks, and it's something that I would happily live with, but I also thought it was important that I mention it here. And now if you're wondering how the Sennheiser Momentum 4s factor into this equation, I rate the Momentum 4s as roughly on par with the Sonys. And that's to say both are excellent. Both are also imperfect, and I think either is an equally good choice depending on your preferences for features and sound quality. I'll link you to my review of the Momentum 4s at the end of this video so you can see what I think of those and put them into context with with everything I've said here. But to bring this video to a close, I think the Edifier W830NB is a really interesting wireless headphone option. I think it's an excellent choice for those of you looking for a wireless headphone where you're going to use active noise cancelling sometimes, but not all the time. If you're buying them primarily for active noise cancelling, I think maybe look somewhere else. Unless you're looking for noise cancelling to then listen to things like audiobooks and podcasts, vocal range frequencies aren't affected by the active noise cancelling, they're going to be completely fine. But if you're buying them for music listening, I think they're mostly a good wireless headphone that happens to have active noise cancelling, as opposed to a great sounding active noise cancelling headphone. I hope that makes sense. And of course, when we factor in the price being less than 1/3 the cost of options like the Sonys and the Sennheisers, the W830s suddenly show what great value they are. They're not perfect, but they're excellent value. Now, one final point that I should make here is that the quality of the sound when the active noise cancelling is switched on could change in the future. I imagine that that's something they could pretty easily tweak with some future firmware updates. So if Edifier see this review and maybe get feedback from other people, there's also a chance that a few months from now, the sound of these could be much better when active noise cancelling switched on, and that's a really exciting prospect. And so with those clarifications made, if you think these sound like a good option for you, I've got links in the description down below where you can go and pick up a pair for yourself. If you've decided to look elsewhere though, maybe you've decided it's worth spending a little bit more money to get a better performance across all different modes, then I've linked up here my review of the Sennheiser Momentum 4s. So watch that video to why I still think that they're the best wireless active noise cancelling headphone that I've tried so far. For now, I want to say a huge thanks to channel members here on YouTube, to channel Patreon members, and to those of you that leave super thanks here on YouTube on videos like this one. And until next time, happy listening, be kind to each other, and I'll see you here again soon on Passion for Sound.